That'd be great if they could do something. You could rename it Crystal Lake.
Crystal Lake. Oh, yeah, Crystal Lake.
It's not gonna be a lake.
It's a watershed.
It's a watershed.
How many neighborhoods? 7, 8?
I don't know.
What,
Have you talked to
9?
the other 6 or 7 people that aren't paying their fair share? The other subdivisions?
That's what you should do. Yeah.
You know what though? That was not a bad idea to say if you could shut off their entryway into there, what can you do?
Yeah, the pony.
Sorry, it's
The
private
pony up.
property. I'll back your water up. Shut down the
It's
dam.
stiff farming. I know you like to get back to your private property.
But you can't, because you
However.
haven't paid the toll yet.
So you shut the water where it comes in, put a valve there.
I guess, one of those big wheels, I don't know. I don't even know how
And you can turn it on really high when the people that don't pay.
Sorry, shut off.
Once this gets up and running, can we make sure the closed caption is working too? I'm gonna push it to
No, we
navigate.
can't.
Don't poke the bear.
I don't know how that, is that someone that's actually watching it and typing it, or is it automated? I looked at the video, you could watch the closed captioning, but I don't know if it's automated.
Call it a day.
It's automated.
It's like Alexa.
So that's why, it
It's working.
sounds like.
Been recording and we're live.
Wow.
Thank you, thank
It'd be
you, Joe,
too
Kathy.
expensive to pay for somebody to transcribe.
The meeting for the Council Planning and Parks Committee is in session. Our first action is roll call.
Councilmember Grignani?
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni?
Here.
Councilmember Remy?
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell?
Here.
Councilmember Vogt?
Present.
Councilmember McCune?
Here.
Councilmember Garetano?
Here.
And Chairman Cutchin.
Here. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes or any changes?
I'll move to approve the minutes as written.
Second? Don?
Madam Chair, there was a change in the note relative to the approval of the meeting minutes from July 16th. Ms. McCune abstained. So the maker and second of the motion would allow us to reflect that.
Did you abstain, or you weren't here, you said?
I abstained from the last approval of the minutes
Okay.
from the July 16th meeting.
I do have a question before the final vote on that. Why were some of those sections written in red?
Those are the motions,
Oh, okay.
so they're highlighted so they're easy for you all to see and kind of draw your attention to them.
Okay. That's
All-
pleasing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
Thank you all.
Do we have any public input cards?
I do not.
Do any of you want to make a comment or?
Madam Chair, this is Dale and John Hicks. They're here relative to the first item under planning matter. So if you'd like them to speak now, I'm sure they could. If you'd like to wait and let them speak during that particular item on the agenda, it's at your discretion.
Why don't we go ahead and hear from them?
Mr. Hicks, if you'd like to go ahead, please come forward. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming.
Let me just give some disclaimers. I've got a hearing problem, so if I don't answer appropriately, my hearing aids are in, but you know, please excuse me. Thank you for seeing us tonight, and I apologize for missing the last meeting. I just got my wires crossed, so you know, please excuse me for doing that, and thank you for graciously allowing us to come again. Where to start? We purchased, we've been in Wildwood for, well, from the inception of Wildwood, but before Wildwood. We purchased 4 1/4 acres off Fox Creek Road in 1968. So we've been out here for a little while. John's an engineer, he's my business partner. And my son. We purchased some, I'm sorry.
Which is more important?
They're both pretty important these days. We purchased some property at Hinton and 100 in 2006, before the real estate bubble burst. So we bought it at the top of the market. We went through the process of doing a development. It was approved, we were ready to go to record plat, and the economy flipped. And so we, and I feel like it's an epiphany from God, I'm sorry, but out there mowing one day, and it occurred to me that this would make a great site for a cemetery. Now, I guarantee you, I'm in my mid-70s, I didn't live my whole life aspiring to develop a cemetery, but it seemed to make sense. We have graves on that site that predate the Civil War. And so that's pretty amazing that a family is there for that long. And as things would happen, the Wildwood Historical Society has located just a little bit west of us. And cemeteries are really a repository for history. You all are the park board. And it occurred to me that, excuse my voice, I've got a paralyzed vocal cord. It occurred to me that maybe this could be a public-private partnership, because we have been servicing debt on this property for 13 years. And you go in and talk to banks about developing a cemetery, and they look at you like you have two heads. Nobody develops cemeteries. Most of them are old, and the ones that are developed are done by churches. And to do a non-sectarian cemetery, they have no experience, and they don't want to get any experience in doing that. Well, we've gone through the process. We are state licensed, endowed care, but we've not sold or buried anyone out there yet, because we're not established and ready to go. And we don't want to get in the middle of some situation where somebody would die and we couldn't take care of them. So we just have backed off that. Parks, and that's what you're all about, are something that are necessary for a city. And Wildwood has some beautiful parks, but parks are typically an expense for the city. This is one that could be a win-win, because cemeteries can be parks, but they can develop a revenue source. And if you think about it, you can do about 1,000 traditional grave sites per acre. And a traditional gravesite out here is going for about 1,500 starting, and they go up from there dramatically. But that's over $1,500,000 per acre that could be generated in that situation. B.B. McKenzie owned the property. Now, she has passed, but she wanted to be buried in that cemetery. Well, we weren't ready. And I can't tell you how many calls we've had over the years of people wanting to buy pre-need sites. The death care industry is changing. It's about 50-50 now, cremation to traditional burial. But even cremation, cemeteries are all about memorializing people. And if any of you have ever visited Jefferson Barracks as an example, and I have a lot of relatives out there, it's walking on holy ground and seeing people who have died for this country. And we, cities, it's not unusual for a city to have a cemetery. So it's certainly not without precedent. Anyway, we, don't want to just go on and on about that, but that's what it was, just to lay this on the table for you to think about. Would the city have interest in doing a cemetery, doing a public-private partnership? I don't know how many years I have left, but I have no intentions of retiring. I enjoy working. One of the things we came back into Wildwood about, we were selected, our company, to design and build a pet crematorium in Eureka. And that was just so far off my radar, I can't even tell you. But we traveled to Chicago, and the folks we designed and built that for have a pet cemetery in the Chicago area that's 100 years old. And they've gotten into the cremation thing. Well, we did develop and build that crematory. And they have pushed us very hard to devote part of our cemetery to pets. I didn't think that was, I couldn't get my mind around it. It just didn't seem a decent thing to do. But pets, a lot of people, their pets are their kids. And so we devoted 5 acres on the northwest corner to pets. We came back into Wildwood. We were approved to do that, to devote part of that cemetery. But with cremation and columbariums where cremains are placed, you know, I told you $1,500,000 per acre for traditional burial. Well, the columbariums, that goes clear off the charts on something like that. So, and the city, I know you're not a for-profit thing, but if you can have a win-win, make money and have a cemetery, or have a park, why not? So, but we have a pet crematorium that we built in Eureka that is currently doing several hundred animals a month now. And what they wanted to do was scatter these cremains. There's a company that's also Wildwood based, Let Your Love Grow, where they produce a product that mixes with the cremains so that they can actually be used to sustain plant life. And so I don't know. Again, it's really strange that I'm standing here, that I even ever got to this point, but life happens. You know, I didn't create the real estate bubble, but I had to deal with it. And rather than just turn it back to the bank and say it's your problem, that's not the decent thing to do. You take the lemons that you've got and you try to make lemonade, and that's what we're doing. So.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Hicks?
Yeah, how do you envision the city being involved? I mean, will we buy part of the property, or will we co-own it, or what would you
I'm not that far along, but I'm prepared to do whatever. If the city wanted to do the cemetery on their own and they wanted me out of it, that's fine. If they'd like to do a partnership, I work for nothing, which sounds strange, but I enjoy doing what I do. I don't take a salary. And I'd be happy to go until I drop, helping the city make this thing happen. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Don?
You said there's people, that there's grave sites on this property now?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how many, and do the families know that, you know, they have a member buried there?
They do. It's the Portner family. And some of you who've been around for a while may remember Portner's Grove out there. It's out by Stovall's.
Okay.
But the Portner family was on that property. B.B. McKenzie was related to the Portners.
Gotcha.
And she was the family historian and has told us stories about a covered wagon train coming through. Evidently, Manchester Road, Highway 100, was, you know, it was a wagon trail at one time, and covered wagon trains evidently came through. Well, a little girl died while they were in camp there on that property, and she's actually buried in an unmarked grave on the property line out there. Now, BB couldn't identify where it was, but it's an interesting story. And you know, you just go back and you think about what families, to lose a child when you're going from one part of the country to another, it just, you know, it's interesting to just contemplate.
Joe?
So it is a rather unusual request, or, you know, a proposal for us to consider. Because I don't think I've heard of one like this, but it's a unique property, it sounds like, from what you're telling us. So I do have some questions similar to what Councilmember Greg Nanny is. You know, what would be the proposal? It sounds like you're very open to coming up with something. You don't have something that says, here's what I'm offering to do. You're flexible. And I think, that's a question we need to think about is, the average Wildwood, our Wildwood residents want us to, use taxpayer dollars in a responsible way. So, we'd have to understand better, why the city would want to get involved in something like this. Because it is, I don't know that I'm familiar with maybe many municipalities around here having cemeteries. Maybe there are, but
If I may, Pacific is the nearest municipality with one, and the concept is not unique at all. If you look in the Pacific Northwest, it's actually quite common. Portland and Seattle are two major cities that both have public-private partnership in cemeteries.
So I guess 2 questions. How's the demand? You said that you have had people that you've had to turn away, that are interested?
We've had more people than I can tell you about who have called and wanted to buy pre-need.
Yeah.
And we've not really marketed. We had a sign up out there, and the phone rang all the time. The sign's down. The phone's slowed down.
That's why they put gates around cemeteries, because people are dying to get in. So,
Quiet neighbors.
but no, just kidding.
With all due respect, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. None of us are getting out of here alive.
That is true, yeah.
And whether you're cremated or you're buried, traditional burial, we're all gonna go that way someday. And I guess, it's about memorialization, and that's what it is. It's a repository for the history of the community. And
If I can answer that question too, our information is anecdotal as far as demand, but what we found is greater than what we were expecting.
Okay.
A little more concrete evidence. Bob Jenkins, Wildwood resident, used to be the general manager of Schrader Funeral Homes in Baldwin. At that point in time, they were servicing a majority of the West County death care industry. Of that, and Bob could clear these numbers up, but roughly 80% of the people going in there did not have a burial place in mind. Since then, Schrader has also picked up a cremation portion of the market. When I showed Bob the numbers I was expecting, which we looked at pro forma data with an accelerated growth to 150 burials annually, whether that be traditional burial or cremains. And Bob was saying that's drastically low.
So, thanks for that insight there. But the last question I have is, you mentioned that you bought the property at the bubble of the market, and did I hear correctly, you intended to build homes?
we were doing a subdivision.
So just curious, why not revisit that plan since the market has come back?
First of all, I understand Wildwood isn't particularly wanting that type of development anymore, which,
PRD.
PRD, yeah. And we had 3-acre density, but we had 1-acre lots with the rest as undivided common ground. And that's what we were going to do. But we have so much money sunk in this property now in engineering, debt service, that it won't work residentially. And for us, I mean, we could give it away. I could let the bank take it back, but that's not the decent thing to do. And I don't mean to stand here and pat myself on the back, but our family has a history of service. And, I've got relatives who died in World War I, And you just go through the wars. My father-in-law was in the Battle of the Bulge, front line. My dad was on Anzio. You don't quit. You don't walk away. You make it happen. And like I said earlier, life just happens and you have to take it and figure out how to make it work. Now, this may not be anything the city's interested in, but if I didn't come tell you about it, shame on me.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Katie?
Just a couple of questions for you. I'm looking at the diagram here, and that looks to me to be a very hilly space, because you've got topo lines that are very close, so that looks very hilly to me. Where would your first portion of the cemetery 1 acre component go?
Wildwood
If you
has
could
approved
Point that out.
8 acres.
Maybe, Joe, you're better to answer that than I.
Oh, I should know.
This is
Okay.
the first area of internment,
Okay,
and it coincides with the private road that was proposed as part of the residential development. And was,
okay,
for the most part, started, and so this seemed like the logical location here.
okay,
The pet cremains, that area is over here, at 5 acres.
okay,
And so it's a 28 acre site, but it's split roughly in 2 parts by Hinkin Road.
mm-hmm,
And so we were starting on this kind of east side.
okay, thank you, Joe, thank you. And then, where, if we're talking about some of this being park, if we were to do kind of a collaborative component, which part of this whole acreage that you have would be the park part, and what type of park are you?
Well, the whole thing, the whole, as Joe said, we've got Hinkin Road going through the middle of it. And if Hinkin Road's included, that's like a 30 acre tract of ground.
Mm-hmm.
And we love Hinkin Road because it's a road we don't have to develop and it's publicly maintained.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, and it goes right through the cemetery.
The concept has always been to keep people involved in the cemetery without death being an element of that involvement. So if you look at cemeteries and the evolution of them recently, they're making a push to be a park instead of just death care.
Mm-hmm.
We were approached by Bellefontaine or Bellefontaine,
Mm-hmm.
which is just an absolutely gorgeous cemetery. But it's in an area of the city that's unfortunate. But the history that's up there, if you just go through, well, they approached us about partnering out here, and we were very excited about that. Now, that's when Nancy Ilvasacker was president of that that organization. They came out here a couple times, and we thought it was all done. But when, you know, their board of directors decided it just wasn't the right time for them, so they backed away, which is, again, unfortunate. But we're trying to find somebody. We've been unsuccessful in getting it financed. And so that's why I'm here. I mean, I'm just throwing caution to the wind, telling the truth. That's what we want to do, is try to find a partner to make it happen.
Katie, do you have any more questions?
No, I'm finished.
Ken?
Joe, a couple months ago when I was walking and meeting people, cemeteries came up actually more times than I can count actually, because folks were commenting. I am unaware within the city of Wildwood, is there any other cemetery?
There are a number of private cemeteries that predate most of the modern burial techniques. There are family plots on property that has changed hands but are still protected. The only one that I know of that accepts general burials is the location where Mr. Matten was interred.
Okay.
That's in the city of Wildwood.
Okay.
But you also have Bethel United Methodist
That's
and
true.
St. I want to say St. Paul's on
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
what I'm
There's
understanding?
a church
Mhm.
affiliated,
Okay.
St. Paul's Lutheran Church,
Mhm.
Bethel United Methodist Church, and then there's one on Pond Road as well that accepts burial.
Okay.
Mhm.
Isn't Holy
Thank
Cross?
you.
Holy Cross is there.
Yeah, that's it.
But those are all church cemeteries.
Yeah.
And we wanted to try to do something that was non-sectarian.
Mhm.
And
Kim, any other questions?
No, that's it.
Crystal?
So I guess I have two questions. So Joe, you're well diverse in our city, and what do you see this as? What's your input on this, if I can ask?
Well, the department supported the residential proposal. It was 8 homes on 28 acres roughly. And we clustered all 8 homes in about 8 acres of the site up in here. And we were able to preserve all of this, and the hillside here. It seemed like a good proposal. Surprisingly to me, not anyone else, when Mr. Hicks proposed the cemetery, it was well received by the community. They prefer a cemetery versus new residential development there. And I can attest that both Dale and John Hicks have tried very hard to find financing for this and have not left, at least from my perspective, any stone unturned. But they've not been able to find the financing, which is a key component. And then you have the perpetual care that you have to establish a mechanism for that. The city didn't make it any easier because we were required to be endowed care, which they've complied with the state regulations, and I have that certificate. So it's been an interesting site to follow in a lot of ways.
So I guess my second follow-up would be, is that I would like to see this, but I think that we need a little bit more presentation to it to fully understand what the vision would be for me. And I think that, just throwing it up in the air and trying to brainstorm at this committee, because we make more of the decisions of what's presented than trying to brainstorm what we can do. Maybe work with other people or citizens that are in that ward or something and develop a concept and then come back to the committee with something more solid, and then we can look at the cost that might be involved or how we can participate or can't because of public funding. I think that's where we need more, information, and what does that cost look like? I think that's what we're all concerned with at the end of the day. So I'm not against it. I think it's a neat concept. I think that you guys are doing a great job from what you said. And I'd like to see how the city can help, but I just don't have enough information to really push it forward at this point.
I know this isn't a polished presentation.
Mhm.
It's just, I'm standing here before you just throwing an idea out.
Mm-hmm.
One of our thoughts was building an event center here that could be used as a chapel for burial services. I know this sounds bizarre, but maybe weddings and things like that could also occur there. Death is part of living. And like I said, none of us are leaving here alive. And why not incorporate it? Like I said, I know this isn't Jefferson Barracks, it's not a federal cemetery, but all of you have been to Jefferson Barracks, surely. And if you don't come away from that move, it's just as a place to reflect, and that's what parks should be. A place to go sit, enjoy nature, reflect on people who've been here before, and what they've been through.
And just one last comment. If you said the other, I guess on the east or west coast, that you said that this does happen and you've seen these concepts, maybe present something that you guys see or pictures that we can kind of visualize of what you're speaking about, what would be very helpful.
If I may, we're testing the waters.
Okay.
Seeing if it's even an option. We can come back with more ideas, absolutely, and give you a better proposal. Public funding, I understand the sensitivity to that. One thing about this, and again, this is all pro forma data based solely on human burial. It was in the black using very conservative numbers within 4, at most 5 years. Something that was not mentioned, a lot of the cemeteries today that are having trouble, their trouble is being caused because their endowments were started too late in their life cycle. So you have a disproportionate amount of people that did not pay for perpetual care. When that happens, and this is what happened with Pacific, the city had to take over the cemetery from the private individual that was there. Wildwood had the insight to look at that endowment. That's the major advantage in this entire system. Starting from day one, with the exception of the 6 people, 7 that are buried there now, 100% of the internments will be endowed care. That endowment, the way that works is the state requires 15% of virtually every sale. And that's not just the land, that's also monumentation and equipment, we'll say, be deposited into an endowment. We plan on superfunding that, putting 30% into that fund, which, if this partnership were to evolve, the principal cannot be touched. But again, with the operations revenue on the cemetery, it's well past a century before the endowment earnings would ever have to be touched.
If I could say something too, banks and business, some of you may be bankers, I don't know, but everybody looks for bottom line and they want it fast. We live in that kind of world today. Cemeteries are generational businesses. You set it up, but if somebody doesn't have vision to make it happen, it just doesn't happen. And I'm not standing here to line my pockets. I want to see this happen. I want to make it happen. And to leave something for the community.
Don?
So it is a unique idea, and well, I want to thank your family for service to the country, not just decades, but centuries of service. It's wonderful, but I don't want to say no to this because I don't even think it's at its infancy yet. I mean, it's pre-infancy. And we're kind of used to looking at development plans, and in this case, it's going to be more of a business plan, which is going to be a little bit unique for us. I think it'll be hard for the voters and for this committee and the council to convince voters that getting into a partnership with business is going to be a good idea, even if it's the best business plan ever presented. We have a barbecue bash, there's quite a few people that don't like us, and we participate at a pretty minimum level compared to something like this would be. What I could see possibly, though, is the city participating in some sort of a war memorial on the site, where you have possibly, residents that did fight in World War I and World War II and Vietnam, Korea, all the way up to, present wars. Because I know other cities do that. I think it's Manchester has the one right off of Henry Road. They have a nice little area there. There's a pavilion there, if I remember correctly, and it's presented as a park, for people to visit. But then the names are on there also and how they determine whose name gets on there or not, I have no idea. But I could see a little bit of an appetite for that maybe, and, the city participating at that level on a portion of this, and maybe that's something you can include in that.
Absolutely. What you're talking about there is a cenotaph where the people aren't actually buried there, but it's just
yeah, exactly. It's just I don't know if you'd get into actual burials there, but just
that's
a name, and you could do some sort of a service, as a name dedication.
That's exactly what we want. That's where the name came from, Wildwood Memorial Park and Rec. People who aren't buried there, it's where will your name be written? I mean, that's bottom line, that's what it is. One day you're going to pass, and where will your name be written? The Pope. There are a lot of folks who have had their relatives cremated. Took them home and they set them on the mantle, put them in the closet. The Pope has said, that's not right. You need to get them to a permanent resting place, to a cemetery somewhere. That market is untapped, it's huge. Where if we had a columbarium, and frankly, just to tell you some of my ideas, These things are just ideas. We've got some creeks that run through this property. This area here is a very rough piece of property, but it's beautiful. Missouri hardwood, oak, hickory. And we've talked about trying to do a bridge across that creek onto that property where we can put columbarium walls on the bridge, and there'll be niches in there where people can place grenades, things that you don't see anywhere else. It's just, unique, a place that people can go and reflect.
Okay,
No, I didn't have anything else.
Joe?
Yeah, hearing more, and I really, again, do appreciate the thought of coming here and, trying to open up the conversation. I think Councilmember McCune made a good point that, and Councilmember, I think Bartoni said it as well, that we are used to seeing plans come before us, and we don't get involved in something this early. The challenge that I see with this is that, we're a government entity, and obviously we have a fiduciary responsibility to the Wildwood citizens. And so when I see a public and private partnership, the biggest question I imagine that most residents will ask is, what's in it for me? Because you're using my taxpayer dollars. And, it sounds like some municipalities do have cemeteries, public cemeteries. Some municipalities have golf courses, but, there's a lot of questions that would have to be answered, just even to get to the point to consider. Because, I think there was an example, the minute you have public money on something private, many questions get asked. That is, people want the tax dollars used for public purposes. And so I could see questions of, well, if you're going to use public money on this, does this become the city of Wildwood's land? Does it, because you're open, it sounds like you have, okay, well then that's a possibility that maybe there are some ideas that sounds like you'd be interested in even working to give the city some land or something like that. Maybe that's something, a war memorial. There are options. I think that means that maybe we could, keep it open to consider. But, with so much work going on right now in our city and projects, I think of the staff, I don't think they would even have the time to even be able to coming up with how it is. So, there has to be some work, to get to this point. But it is good to know that you seem to be very flexible with this. It's just that, how do we do this so that people are proud of the decision and can see something that they could buy into? And perhaps it is a land that's used for multiple purposes. I love the historic part. I think that is something that just, as a citizen, we want to see preserved and, maintained and even highlighted as a way. I mean, I read about the Portner family, so they have a history here in Wildwood. And the story that you said about a young child, I mean, that's something, I wonder if the Historical Society even knows that story and if they've got some history around that. So I think at this point, it's good to hear that you came today and let us know, and perhaps the committee could consider some ideas. But I guess that it sounds like you certainly want to preserve a use for either all or a portion of this property for some kind of memorial type use.
Absolutely.
But
I'm going to stand here before you with a half-baked idea, and it's more a brainstorming session, I think, to say, hey, here's what we're thinking. We have lived with this for 13 years. We want to see it happen. And I guess the thing I would like to suggest is the parks that the city has, the city's paying to maintain them. The endowment that this builds, it was up into the multi-millions, and not all that long. where it's gonna be self-sustaining, it's gonna take care of itself, and the city's not gonna have to pay for it, so.
Thank you for your presentation.
I'm sorry, so I just want to say one more thing. I have my hand up, but
And John?
And John does too, yeah. So I hear what my colleague, Councilman Garitano, saying. I may phrase it a little bit different to you, and I may have some disagreement with him and Councilman Bartoni to some degree. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't be done. But I think the problem is that this committee is not set up to brainstorm ideas in that respect. I think it would be more helpful if you guys could come back to the table with some different plans that are tangible that we can look at, but also go to Pacific and some of those municipalities and draw up how you think a partnership with the city would look like. Because we can't do that because we don't know what it would look like. And Pacific, if it owns it 100%, will be different, but how they're operating it would be helpful to understand. But certainly if some of these partnerships exist, come to the table with that information, come to the table with these sorts of things, and then we could at least consider something. So I wouldn't lose hope. I think it's a great idea, and I appreciate your time, but I think I'd rather just see something more tangible before we go any further.
Well, we're exploring other avenues. I mean, you know, God willing, this is gonna be a cemetery. And we have been, you know, we've been through the process here. We're gonna hang on. We're tenacious, if nothing else, and make it happen. It's just something I wanted to throw out. Does it make sense? Maybe it doesn't make sense for the city. But make no mistake, we're exploring, and we're not gonna turn it loose. We wanna see it happen, and we wanna, you know, gift it, not in the sense, you know, the real estate, but leave something for Wildwood.
Deb?
Oh, John.
Yes, I've known Mr. Hicks for quite a while, and his problem with his property. He's been working very hard to try to get that property taken care of, and he's doing a fine job of that. And it is a hard thing for him to do, and it's nice that he's willing to take the time to do it. But yes, he has a fairly nice piece of property there, and it should be utilized the best way it can be done, and that's very interesting. It's an idea that can be made, and it's still a nice piece of property.
Joe?
Well, Madam Chair and members of the committee, maybe a bit of an explanation why John and Dale Hicks are here tonight. Both of them came to the Department of Planning and Parks and offered this idea of a partnership on a cemetery. And that's very unusual. In almost 35 years of doing planning either for St. Louis County or the city of Wildwood, I've never heard of a cemetery proposal which would involve a public-private partnership. I thought it was only fair before I asked two busy individuals, along with 8 other busy individuals, to think about this, or to invest time, money, and resources in doing research. They deserve to know even if it was an option, and that's why they're here tonight. If you heard it and said, there's just no way this would ever work, then I think they know that they need to move on to the next idea. But if there is an option, I'm sure they'd be glad to spend the time and money and resources to come back with some ideas that they could present to you, and you could see more tangible concepts. That's why I thought it was appropriate they be here tonight.
Joe?
Just maybe 2 questions. Are you in the business of maintaining cemeteries? So that would be some organization or some body that would have to be
I
hired?
mentioned earlier, I don't really work for nothing. I enjoy mowing grass. Call me crazy, but I like to mow that grass.
So,
And it's like a religious experience for me out there on a tractor, going back and forth, watching the deer run around, looking at, I mean, it's a pleasure. And as long as God gives me the strength I'll be out there mowing.
So that's a good question, or a good answer, because I don't know what it takes to run cemeteries. I don't know if you have to have, certain, I'm sure the burial, you have to have certain staff to handle that kind of work there. And then there's the coordination with the monument probably and all that. I don't know. I'm not in the cemetery business. But we have had other people come with proposals to say, hey, I would like to donate property to the city. And sometimes they put conditions, like sometimes they say, well, I want a portion of it for a certain use, or there's, whether it's a trail or something. So maybe that is something you can think about, if you want to do a partnership with the city, is how would you frame that up to say, here's what I'm willing to work with the city, give, and it sounds like you want to retain some of that for a memorial use. So just a thought there. And we've had that come before. But I think that might be something that you'll get people interested, because then people could start to think of ideas of how we can use this land that could benefit our residents, whether it's an area, whether, a quiet park area, an area maybe for certain functions. Maybe the cemetery's in one section and the other land is nearby, so there's a bit of a separation. Those are all things that I think, would be helpful. But I would say certainly don't walk away feeling like there's not, it's just, I think we just need something a little more baked to think about.
No, I appreciate you all seeing and listening to us.
Okay.
I want to just echo a little bit that Wildwood's a new community in the scheme of things here in the state of Missouri. I'm getting older, and so, this is where I live and breathe, and all of it's very near and dear to me, so having the ability to have some place where I could be buried here in this town would be a thoughtful thing to, I think, provide our residents in many different ways. However, I think we need to see how making that, what component the city has to hold on to in order to make that work for you all to have a sustainable business. And I was going to ask the question, have you talked to Schrader's to see if they want to partner as the facilitator on?
We did years ago. Bob
Okay.
Jenkins was the general manager there, and Bob is a Wildwood resident, and provided a lot of information. Bob is still a very good friend and responsible for us building the pet crematory. Loving Hearts, give you a commercial here for them, over in Eureka. Have we talked to him? We talk to Bob all the time. And he would be involved in this. Now, the cemetery business, or the funeral home business,
Is different than the cemetery.
I'm told it's a peculiar business. They're very competitive, and they won't cooperate with one another. And now, I don't know, I'm just telling you what I've been told. So we haven't approached Schrader
Okay,
or
so
anybody
you're
else
going
to say, hey, do you want to partner with us? Because we've been told if we partnered with Schrader, a number of other funeral homes
Then Kudus won't. So.
wouldn't use this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
human
I
nature.
was just curious.
One thing I would like to tell you, John and I are Wildwood residents too. And John is, he grew up out here. So, it's not like I'm an outsider, I'm one of you.
And I think too, I may have emphasized that, use for Wildwood citizens, but, maybe that's part of your ideas, is that you market it, or, you propose it as this is you want to benefit the Wildwood citizens, obviously, after they've passed. And so maybe that is part of the return that city residents can see they get back. But you have to understand, it's like business, you just have to try to see how this, why folks would be interested in something like this.
Man, leave a card with everybody, a business card.
I can provide them your contact
Okay,
information.
if you have any thoughts, ideas, some that have you thought about this, I'm not so proud or arrogant that I think I've got all the answers, because I know I don't. Maybe you've got some thought that I just haven't even thought of, and we'd like to explore it. And the public-private partnership, I'll tell you, frankly, where that idea hit me was when our president's talking about public-private partnerships. I thought, wow, maybe that'll work. And I mean, I don't know how it works. I haven't formulated that, but I wanted to come talk to you and say, we're open. Wildwood can own the real estate. I'll work for nothing. I just want to see it happen.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
For your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Sharing your idea with us.
Thanks for seeing us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Joe, do you need anything from us?
Well, I think from the perspective of the Hicks, do you want them to pursue some of the suggestions like Dr. Remy and others have made, and that they put together a set of options or an option and come back with that for discussion purposes?
How does the committee feel about that?
What I'd like to see, and what I was kind of hinting to him, is maybe put a survey out or just kind of present it in such that Katie just did, that, you know, we're all Wildwood residents and this is where we grew up and live and breathe. What is the feel of the community from just a common survey that we can just throw out that's simple? Like, would they want to entertain this or not?
The problem is that there's only, no disrespect to most people's surveys, but the survey bias that gets done, it doesn't necessarily reflect a almost 40,000 people population.
Mhm.
So I think although it's a good idea to get 150 people to fill it out and give us their input, I think if they want to partner, then the onus unfortunately is on them to come to the table with a plan. It's not our plan. We don't do that in city and come and give ideas and then give people plans. They come to us. So I would say, with no disrespect, bring us a plan.
You gave us the answer to the question we need. You're willing to hear
Right.
it.
No.
It's
not
Not for us to do that, right?
No.
That's on them.
I don't think it's for us to tell them.
We don't, yeah, exactly.
I think
Yeah,
if they want to bring us a plan, great.
Right.
If they don't.
Again,
we would review it. We're happy to review it.
that's the intent of my question. Do you want them to pursue some options so you can look at them? It appears
Yep.
that the committee feels it's at least worth seeing the next step.
Well,
Absolutely.
I appreciate their passion and their desire to serve Wildwood like they've done for other
Sponsors and
individuals and
cemeteries,
communities. But I think it's gonna be a real hard sell, again, because it's private money used, it's public money used for a private purpose.
Well, I think we need to come to just some decisions on the public-private
I think we need to see
percentages.
their plan
But
first.
we have to see their plan first,
Right.
Deb,
Agree.
and see,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, what
They're-
costs
I
are gonna
understand
be.
that, Katie, and I'm not negating that, I'm just saying, I think it's gonna be a real hard sell because
It
of the
could very well
the
be.
tax dollars that would be invested.
It could very
Well,
well be.
unless there is a dedication to the city, which changes then the
Right.
conversation.
There's no way to predict it until we see something.
Exactly.
Right.
John?
It goes back to the question I asked Mr. Hicks from the beginning, what is it that he's proposing? I'd like to know what a proposal would look like. We can't act on anything other than that, and I think that's the simplest way to proceed. I know that it's gonna require some work on their part, you know, they've already put some work into this, but if they want us to be involved, we have to know how they want us to be involved, and then we have to be able to respond to that in that either we're interested in being involved or we can't be involved.
Right.
That's where it comes down to, there's no other alternative.
Yep.
And I guess I wanted to have them have some knowledge of what the next step might be if the committee's going to at least hear any more regarding this proposal. So,
Is
know what
okay?
they're wanting.
Right. Thank you.
Good, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your time.
The next item under planning matters is the request for vacation of a portion of the Three Sisters Farm right-of-way intended for trail purposes and whatnot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, this little strip here should look familiar to you. It was purchased by a private individual at a St. Louis County tax sale. The strip of land is encumbered in its entirety with a public easement to the city of Wildwood for recreational purposes. Much of our discussion has focused on that strip and potentially the city owning the strip besides just the control of it with the easement. Most recently, the owner of the strip contacted the Department of Planning and Parks and asked if the city would be willing to vacate this area of public right-of-way so that with that vacation and the release of the easement, he could negotiate with surrounding property owners about the potential sale of those two strips to those adjoining lots and remove any potential public use of that area. The department was not in favor of such, but did acknowledge that it's a decision that should come first to the committee and ultimately city council. There is a question about the vacation of public right-of-way versus a public easement. In the past, tradition has that if you vacate public right-of-way, you split the width and each of those halves go to the adjoining property on either side of the former center line. So it may not even be an option, but again, I wanted to present it to the committee and return to the property owner of the strip identified as 1500 Homestead Summit Drive, and based on the opinion of the members tonight.
John?
I am quite familiar with this because this is in my ward. I have a resident who has been upset by what's happened here, and to be honest with you, I'm upset by what's happened here. Mr. Lynch knows very well what's gone on here. There's a couple of things about this that are bothersome. Number one is this man purchased this property for taxes, back taxes from St. Louis County, who should have informed the city of Wildwood what was going on. And as typical of St. Louis County, they've managed to blow it again. I'm getting a little tired of their behavior. They should have learned 25 years ago what happens when you make me mad. But anyway, anyway, that's another story. But this piece of property was set aside for the city of Wildwood as an easement, as a right-of-way. It belongs to us. Technically speaking, it belongs to us, okay? And to vacate this for a guy who bought this as a potential opportunistic move is not correct. Even if he wants to sell it to the adjacent property owners, if we could do that, why should we give him the opportunity to sell it to the adjacent property owners when we want it as part of our easement? He had the opportunity to sell it back to the city of Wildwood, and he didn't take that. I know why, and I can't really talk about that in an open session, but you know why, okay? I say no to this proposal, absolutely, positively, flat out, no. And if he doesn't like that, tough, and he can pick it out on me if he wants to. I'm more than happy to discuss it with him. I make a motion that this not be done.
I'll second.
Continued discussion, I saw Ken's hand up.
I was just gonna motion and postpone this indefinitely, but that's done already, so.
But it's gonna be postponed indefinitely.
Yeah.
So does the maker of the motion want to change?
No, I want to kill this right there on the spot. I don't want to just postpone it
So-
forever. I want it, the answer is no.
Is this to continue for the city to retain that?
Absolutely. Technically, it belongs to us anyway. You know, I mean, he doesn't, the only reason he has any possession to it at all is because the county screwed this up. Am I making my point here?
So we have a motion on the floor with the second. All those in favor?
Hold on, can we actually do that, or do we have to just postpone it indefinitely?
You can actually say we're not
We can,
interested.
I'm sorry, okay,
In vacating or releasing the easement.
perfect, sorry about that, Dale.
It's okay, so before we take a vote, read the motion again,
And the
please.
motion is to not vacate the easement. It's that simple. Is that what you seconded? That's what we
Seconded.
seconded.
You're just on your-
You don't understand?
Sir, yes, sir.
Whatever kills it.
What?
But you're vacating the easement and then we're not interested in the right of way either. If you want to include that too.
No, that whole piece of land belongs to the city of Wildwood as an easement for our trail system.
Is it used today as a trail?
No,
No. And the department in its memorandum said that although it may never be used or may be used in the foreseeable future, If you release it, you've lost the opportunity. And the opportunity sometimes is much greater in importance than, let's say, solving an issue for an individual or putting aside the fears of these owners about what might happen in the future. Nobody purchased a lot here without full knowledge of what was going on. The easement, the right-of-way and the easement existed long before there was a buyer.
And let me just say one more thing, one more comment before you vote on this. This would be one exception to my rule about not using eminent domain if I had to use eminent domain on this property. If that were necessary, I would use that on this property, where I would never use it anywhere else in the city of Wildwood. That's how strongly I feel about this.
All those in,
Well, one follow-up question, and I'm supportive of the motion, but, and I don't see anything from the adjoining property owners, so, you know, I'd be concerned of changing any status anyway,
The
because,
adjacent property owners would be upset if.
Well, that's what I mean,
If
yeah.
we don't maintain control of this property.
well, yeah, I think they would be concerned that something could happen with it, and that
They
could be a
already are.
problem, and so, to
But they're
do,
partly responsible for putting us in this position, but I can't
Okay.
discuss that.
yeah, I just think right now it's probably best to continue as it is right now.
any other discussion before we take a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Our next item is landscaping design in the South Plaza area of Pedestrian Bridge over State Route 100, east of State Route 109, Ward A.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, the department's memorandum provides background relating to this particular request. When the second pedestrian bridge was being considered, a number of additional amenities were designed and planned for it in the area where it was to be located. When the bidding was completed, it became apparent that the cost of the bridge itself precluded certain amenities that had been programmed. One such was a more robust landscaping plan at both terminuses of the bridge, one on the north side of Route 100 and the other here on the south side of Route 100. Over the course of the development of the Canterbury subdivision, the department required McBride and Homes to add an abundant amount of landscaping on the common areas in the vicinity of the pedestrian bridge. Our landscaping plan now that is in place doesn't compare well to what Canterbury has done. Mr. Garitano, the representative, one of two for Ward 8, has heard from many of the residents in Canterbury subdivision, and they are seeking additional landscaping in that vicinity to improve its aesthetic and appearance. To that end, the department reached out to our landscape architect, asked that individual to prepare a plan, and then bid that plan out. And tonight, the results of that process are identified in the memorandum provided as part of the packet. We did receive two bids, one from Baxter Gardens, the other from a local firm, Dick's Great Outdoors. The total cost to complete the landscaping as proposed at the south end of the pedestrian bridge is just over $6,800. The south end of the bridge is also the selected location for our sculpture that will be placed in the center of the little roundabout island. So there's opportunity here in many regards to really kind of add an important aesthetic in a prominent public space area that adjoins the development that has limited public space or common space due to the density associated with it since being in town center. The department is presenting this to the committee tonight for its consideration.
Joe, once the statue is moved to a different location, what will go in that spot?
You can ask
Probably
that.
replace it, I would recommend with some type of tree, so there's a little bit of a vertical
Frisbee dog.
component to what's happening at the end of the bridge.
And how is this going to play into the current construction on the bridge?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the pedestrian bridge itself is complete. The bridge to the west over Route 109, over Route 100, this really will be kind of separate from such, and this is elevated a substantial amount of feet from the roadway bed itself. And then the second component, I think I mentioned in the memorandum, as development occurs in Brightleaf, we would want to offer to do the same on that side of the bridge to enhance its aesthetic and appearance.
And I know I'm gonna get this question, I'm sure you don't have the answer. How long would it be before Brightleaf sees a replica or something similar to that?
Given the pace of sales, it's probably going to be a few more years, quite frankly, unless the committee and city council would like to accelerate that timeline.
Joe?
Just what, will the statue be wearing glasses or not?
It is Frisbee Dog.
Oh, I thought it was John.
No, it's a dog.
The Frisbee dog, yes, that's right.
Well, that's what we'll put in afterwards.
Well,
I'm sure you could.
The memorial to Dr. Grignani will go
I'll
back
give
on the
you
dog.
yeah, I think that's greatly appreciate the support. Those residents, as Mr. Vunich has mentioned, they have expressed a lot about that area there and would like to see it done. And I think they'd like to equally see the other side get done at some point, so.
I know we discussed this once before, and I asked this question before, but about people damaging this vandalism, how do you deal with that?
Well, the best we can do is try to identify the locations and some type of pattern. Have our parks and trail officer in those locations when we have a pattern and understanding. Quite frankly, we don't catch many. We do catch a few, but we repair it, we fix it, we replace it, we paint it.
Is there any chance of putting a remote camera on that?
We haven't done that. The police department does have a mobile camera unit. They've had it over at the other pedestrian bridge, toward Village Plaza on the north side to kind of identify a potential, an ongoing problem we have there with the white vinyl fence that keeps getting damaged. And we haven't caught anyone yet or persons, but we keep trying. So if we see a pattern, we often try to escalate what we do in response.
Katie?
I found my answer, never mind.
Ken?
Joe, a lot of times when I come to these meetings, a lot of these things always seem to be in Ward 8, that we're always trying to beautify Ward 8 in other wards. Are these things, do we have these sort of things in Ward 4 and Ward 3 and other things? Because I just don't ever talk, I'm only asking this, Joe, because...
We got Ward 3 coming up.
Oh, I'm waiting, because we don't have sidewalks yet either. But I'm not even being facetious. Is this something unique to Ward 8 currently?
The provision of aesthetic improvements has focused more in Ward 8 because of town center.
Mm-hmm.
And the availability of public space we've gained through the requirements of our zoning ordinance because we have more development in town center than elsewhere in the other wards. Have we fairly distributed the available funds for landscaping and other aesthetic enhancements? Probably not. We don't have a lot of public space necessarily like this in wards 1 and 6. They're more rural, and we have larger park facilities. Wards 4 and 5, they're fairly well developed, and there's not a lot of public space because they developed under St. Louis County, which precludes us to have an opportunity like this. We are looking at median plantings and it is now Pond Grove Loop Road, the section that was constructed with St. Louis County was the jurisdiction. We're obviously doing Ward 5 Park. In Ward 4, we've got an anniversary park, and we've added the sidewalk along Clayton Road to the subdivision point Clayton. And we are looking in Ward 3, I believe, or is it 2? Probably 2, the Woodcliff Heights area as a potential location for a life course for an outdoor gym that's coming up on our discussion here. So it isn't that we ignore it, it's just what's available and where we see the development that can obtain public space to do that.
Well, I would say that the bridges that have been replaced have been a major impact for the less dense part of the community, because those were planned with plantings around them and also with a nicer design than just a culvert bridge. So.
And if you want a statue, you can
That would be an
negotiate with
aesthetic addition.
Puritano.
I'm just establishing that Warden seems to get preferential
The only thing a
treatment.
warning is. if you
Be
put up a
happy to
statue-
help Ward
if you
3
put-
out, just, find us some public space there.
Just to warn you, if he puts up a statue, you might import pigeons, but I just.
Don't worry, they're not gonna catch you from your vandalism, John.
Crystal?
You may be asking for a bridge or a,
Is that why you asked the
For
camera?
cameras.
So for the bid proposal for Zix, I just see an amount, I don't see any detailed job description and so it's
The
that's
landscape
his.
architect sent
Okay.
all the nurseries, this plan, and Baxter Gardens did a better job of identifying it, but
Mhm.
Mr. Dick has
That was
his
gonna be
plan.
my question too.
It's listed in the plan schedule right
Okay,
there.
It's
okay.
on the schedule.
That's just so little.
Wasn't it by the numbers and then?
So, yeah, that makes more sense. So I
Yeah,
would
can
go ahead and,
certainly ask that
Mhm.
those empty columns
Yes,
on
the
Mr.
numbers.
6 be added.
Okay.
So it reflects the same as what Baxter Gardens
Okay.
provided.
that'd be great. So I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the Zix Great Outdoors bid proposal as presented.
And Don's offered a
That's
second.
it, second.
Don, you're still on the list for comments?
I was just gonna make the motion.
Joe,
Nope, that's it.
any more discussion before we take a vote? Gary, you want to read the motion?
Motion to approve the landscaping design of the South Plaza area of Pedestrian Bridge over State Route 100 East of State 109.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. So now we're into park matters. There's 7 items for consideration. The first one is interview results from the planning and design firms for Town Center Public Space, Village Green, Ward 8.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, the department would just like to preface its presentation relating to the memorandum with a statement about timing. As you know, there was some confusion, let's say, about the interviews, the scheduling, the participation of the committee members, et cetera. From the committee's perspective, Mr. Vogt and Dr. Bregnani participated in all 4 of them. They were here both on Tuesday and Thursday of last week. We also set up a go-to meeting site so that if you wanted to dial in and hear the content of the discussion, the questions that were raised, the responses to those questions, that was available. And we also live streamed them or recorded them so you could view them at your leisure before tonight's meeting. Saying all of that, it's an important enough project that if you didn't have time to review the live streams, or if you didn't have time to basically talk with Mr. Vogt or Dr. Gragnani, or Sam, the city administrator, Julie, our economic development manager, or the department, we have that time. It's more important, in my opinion, to do it right, not to do it quick. So I preface everything by that, because I think your input is important, and obviously, at the end of the day, you're the one that has to sell it to the other 8 council members and your residents, who eventually will be asked to fund it, whatever is the decision that's made. Saying all of that, as you know, we started with 5 firms. The committee selected 4 for interviews. The 4 firms, as Kathy's written in the memorandum, would all be capable of doing a good project on the 6-acre tract of land west of City Hall. The interview process, I believe, was consistent across the board. Each of the firms that participated in the interviews were given an hour. The first 15 to 20 minutes of the hour of time was dedicated to the firms, kind of going through some background about the firm and the team. Each had other entities or consultants associated with them. Some of the projects they did, questions from the interviewers, Dr. Greg Downey, Mr. Bope, and city staff. And then finally, we gave them an opportunity at the end of the hour to ask us questions. And sometimes are as illustrative or informative as any question we could ask them. What are they thinking? And have they found a hole in our logic or something we've missed, that kind of thing. We did two on Tuesday, Human Nature and SWT, and then we did the final two on Thursday, which was Power Socks and Planning Design Studio. In discussions with Mr. Pope and Dr. Gragnani, I think they were leaning toward the last firm, Planning Design Studio, which is a local firm, had a good engineering support team, have done projects in municipalities, and the ones they presented were from Brentwood. Julian liked SWT. SWT is a very knowledgeable firm, has many projects in this region and across the Midwest as well as the United States. They are a premier firm in many regards regarding sustainable sites and lead applications relative to building design. I say that because SWT did the landscape plan and the design for City Hall, here where we are tonight. Sam and Kathy and I lean toward human nature. I can't speak for the city administrator, but Kathy and I liked a lot of what they said regarding the approach to projects. And one of the phrases they use is that when problems are identified or the lack of consensus can be reached, they see that as the best opportunity to put their knowledge, their expertise together to find the best solution for those competing interests. They are an outstate firm. They are headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio. The reason we found them is a lady that was on our Parks Action Plan Update Committee, Jennifer Coverdell, had gone to Cincinnati, participated in a race in Cincinnati, and the race went through Washington Park, which is the project. She went back after the race, took a number of pictures, photographs for the department, brought it back and said, you really should look at this firm, they've done some wonderful things. The other thing that Human Nature, I think, provided that was interesting to at least Kathy and I, maybe more so than Julian, is that the projects they've done have led to economic development opportunities around them, particularly in Washington Park. And we saw that as something of a positive here. Because again, it is downtown district designated property under the town center regulating plan. And they had some, you seem to have a better grasp of what we were talking about when we were describing, we don't know what's going to happen here. We have an idea, but the land use is in flux as much as the design right now. We're waiting to see what the design may come up with and how it might affect land use. So in an unusual way or unique way, the design of this Village Green and its ultimate development may set the tone for future development around it on other properties. So we don't have a consensus amongst the 6 of us that participated. There's 3 that thought Human Nature was a good firm. There's 2 that liked Planning Design Studio and 1 that selected SWT. So I give you that mess and let you basically think about that. Dr. Gragnani and Mr. Vogt may want to add what their thoughts were about their selections. So from that perspective, I'll conclude and I'm available for any questions. Again, if you didn't have an opportunity to review the live streams or talk to the other 2 members of the committee, let's get it right, let's not rush it, and we have the time. Thank you.
Mr. Buck, would you like to express any comments that you might have from participating?
No.
Dr. Gragnani?
Well, as Joe said, there's not a consensus. I think any of these four groups are capable. Question comes down to some finer points. I guess, for me, I didn't like the group from Ohio as much because they're from Ohio. Not that I don't like Ohio, but because they're remote from us, and they don't understand us. The two groups from the last day, the second day, are groups of people who have done work here. In the case of Powers Bower Sox, they've got 3 residents on their staff that live here, and they were involved on other projects, including the city hall. The design studio people really took me off guard. At first, I wasn't sure about them, and as we went on through the interview, it became more evident that they have no preconceived idea, but they came with some actual images of some thoughts, and they seem to understand that this is a green that at the moment will be a focus of activity developing around it. As I've pointed out to everybody a couple of times, is that I viewed this green as a grain of sand put into the oyster of which the pearl will develop around that grain of sand. And that's what's going to happen around this green, is things are going to evolve around it, because nobody really knows what's going to happen in the turf immediately adjacent to the green at this point. I mean, we know what our town center plan is supposed to be, but that seems to be in some state of flux in addition. Anyway, in a final analysis, I guess Design Studio came up as one of the top contenders to me. And Powers Bower Sox probably a close second. The other 2 firms I thought were good, but I just felt that they didn't meet those criteria that I stated. Would I be sad if you picked somebody other than the 2 that I like? No. I mean, you pays your money, you take your chances. Okay, I mean, that's all I can tell you. But that's the reason I picked the 2 I did.
If I could do a footnote to Dr. Gragnani's comments, both Kathy and I, our second choice was Powers Bower Sox. They had a strong team, and one of the key components of that team was a firm for Book of New York that's done some really just imaginative stuff in an urbanized area, which we considered the downtown district to be.
So, Joe, a lot of these mention public input, which we know is a must, but where in this process is public input going to happen? Because I would think that it would be before we move forward with anything.
The way the request for qualifications was structured and adopted or recommended by this committee, they'll do the first 2 tests, I think, almost simultaneously in parallel courses. There's an environmental assessment of the property. Where's our grand trees? Are there any wetlands? What's the slope here? Poor soils, good soils. But while that's going on, that would not preclude them getting the public engagement process started. And that's the key component to knowing eventually what are the facilities, what's the texture, context of the park. Is it passive? Is it passive active, or is it active? So they can't put a design down on paper until they've done that public input process.
And just as a comment in general, I'd certainly like to watch the live stream, because I wasn't able to participate before we actually take a vote on anything. Of course, we'll get a consensus of that from everybody, but Crystal?
I just want to comment that I watched the live stream and I like the human nature aspect for the reasons that you stated, but also for the concept of what we worked on the Park Action Committee. We got a lot of feedback from residents on what we try to educate what a village green was by definition, and what the concept of what I understood it and what we were trying to relate during that committee was it is like a center green with more of an economic development around it. But there was some concerns with that development and how would that look, you know, with competing businesses and as such. But we did come up with some interesting new ideas of what we could use the space for in the park action, and we can maybe readdress or, you know, bring those out and kind of highlight what we've already been told, and then kind of use that as a basis, since we used a lot of time and resources at that, and then develop it from there. But I thought that this firm I agree, being an out of town is a little concerning to me, but not off the charts, or not something that I wouldn't be scared of, but I just felt that they would bring something new, vibrant, had the same concept idea of what I think it is, and from what I understand, your idea. And I don't know, if you guys haven't watched it, I highly encourage you to do so. But again, I think they were all good, but if I had to choose, I would do that. But I did like, I can never remember the names, the last one, the PDS, the Planning Design Studio is my second choice. So,
And if you'd like, we can certainly provide you the links or the location of the live streams from the 4 interviews. And then I can send to you as well as part of that email, the Parks Action Plan that speaks to the Village Green, so you can see what that group of volunteers ultimately came up with in terms of their parameters.
I appreciate that. Don?
So I haven't had a chance to watch it either, and Joe, if you could provide that, I was gonna ask something similar today, so something like that would be helpful. So I'm actually, I have a comment, but I wanna make a motion that we postpone this for 30 days and give everybody an opportunity to do their homework. And I am one of the people that haven't done my homework, but I get, that being said, I do have a couple comments. So one would be, to me, kind of like if everything's tied, I would lean local. But if one company is way better and they're in Cincinnati, then you go with that, but all things being the same, I would lean local. But did any of them, and maybe the presentations will answer this question for me, actually have renderings and pictures, and was that included in there?
It was in the packet.
One of them did?
Yeah,
Okay.
the design studio people came in with some concept. But, Mr. Williams and I talked about that, we said those that didn't come in with a concept, they had no preconceived notions. But there is a preconceived notion to this, in that what is a green? Because I asked that question
Right.
repeatedly, what is your concept of a green? And they didn't want to make a commitment for the most part, and it's for that matter, Design Studio didn't either. But he said, well, this is kind of what, we kind of worked up some things that we thought might be something that you would be interested in, but they were open to whatever. And I think they want to go to the community to get some ideas, but they at least took the time to actually put up a rendering. They had 3 renderings, in fact, that they had as their concept. And their concept looked very much like what my concept was, but understanding that maybe that's only my concept, I don't know. I know maybe it's theirs and mine, but nobody else's, I don't know. But I was impressed with that part of it.
Okay, that's all I have, except for my motion. So-
Did somebody second your motion?
Well, can I make a suggestion? 30 days actually would make us skip October's Planning and Parks meeting.
Yeah.
So could you just maybe make it for the next planning?
Yeah,
and
and
Parks?
that's what my intention was,
Yeah.
just to postpone until our next meeting.
Okay.
Katie Brownwell?
Having gone through the materials provided, I didn't get to see the actual interview process yet, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards human nature, only because I would like to see a firm from outside of town bring in some new ideas and new perspectives. And I think we had some challenges with a couple of these other companies and other projects that we've dealt with. And that's not to say that human nature wouldn't have problems as well, but I was glad to see that they were very interested in getting some of the community input, but also looking at information that we've already collected and getting the Parks Action Committee information that just completed their work last year is crucial to getting a good village green put together, in my opinion, that we have to have that input from that Parks Planning Commission. That's what we told them we wanted them to do, so.
Kenny, did you have a comment?
I was seconding the motion, and I was just going to ask the maker of the motion, could we consider also, I don't know how to do this, but can we tie into the next meeting? It's something at least that can be put on the social media and the community, the city website to encourage public participation at the next meeting as well, where we could at least engage the community, hear what they have to say preliminarily.
I think, though, that
Preliminarily.
if I could speak to that, I think it might be too early because there may not be anything to show, but I think the intent is once we do have, we should totally have that. And we've done that in the past, you know, open houses. I just feel at this point right now, there's not enough information.
I guess the reason why I'm saying this is because I would assume that what the next steps are going to be is to whittle down this list down to probably 2 or 3, or is it to go down to 1?
I suspect that
So then if that's the case, then we're gonna go down to 1. I would rather get public participation now, frankly, because people are passionate about this green. And they may have different perspectives about people wanting outside city, inside city, people with concepts that are gonna be perhaps a bit different than what I think it's important.
I think, well, we'd have to see, well, what would we present to the public? They'd have to watch the video links too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they can, can't they?
Yeah,
Right, so if we post that, then they can do that.
and then have them,
Maybe nobody will show up, I don't know, but
well, I mean,
I'd like to just make it known.
I hate to interrupt, but I'm just thinking out loud, which I do too often, I'm sorry. What if we posted them on the website, on our homepage, we indicate that we have posted interviews for potential companies that will help us design a village green, that will require your input as citizens. Who do you want to work with? Who do you think the city should be working with? Or is that too much public input?
We can certainly do it. The only thing I would suggest is if we do it, we post it, we ask them to review the interviews, provide us what they think might be the best firm, and to do it before the next meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Oh, yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
good,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
We
Yeah.
can provide you that input
Mhm.
as a component of your decision.
We pop it up there for 2 weeks, we have it on the homepage as a
Yeah.
click that they can go to, and the input that we get is the input that we get.
Yeah,
I can certainly invite them to the next meeting if they'd
Yeah.
like to come and speak to what they
Mhm.
saw and why they submitted their comment.
Joe, would there be an e-newsletter in
Yeah, I
time?
put it in there as well, how to get. the
E-newsletters go
I
out
think-
every Friday.
yeah, I think that approach is gonna be a good approach,
Mhm.
because I was thinking when you suggested that we would have some kind of
Yeah.
open house, and we don't have anything
No.
other than what is being recorded. So for whoever wants to take a look at the video and take the survey online, I think it's good, because ultimately, I think a lot of people are going to say, that's why you have this role. We expect you.
True.
Yeah.
We expect you guys to make the
True,
decision.
but if someone came and let me speak to, but if someone came and said that we had to decide between, we were gonna have a ban from the 2000s versus the 1960s, there's gonna be people are gonna have different views.
I think, yeah, but we don't have that, we're not at that point right now.
But
We're
we are
just saying we're having
ultimately
a ban.
tasked next month, though, to whittle
Yeah.
down to 1, and these individual groups may have very different ways that they're going to come up with a design.
Well, I would say put it out there and let's see what we get. I think most people will rely on us to come up with that.
Crystal?
Okay, so great ideas. I just want to step right in front of it though, just for a second, just for brainstorming purposes and from what I've learned from the Park Action Committee. First, you need to educate the residents of what a village green is. And you have to put that forward first before you even present this to them. Because they're gonna go, we want a swimming pool.
Yeah.
We want a golf course or a putt-putt.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think before you even open this up and say, hey, we're looking for input or concepts, or who do you guys think this or that, the educational piece is important here. And to go with what the master plan is. We have to educate them what the master plan states and what this purpose is for, before we jump to what you're saying. So that's what I would recommend before throwing this out to the community.
Well, maybe a compromise. So the Park Action Plan Update Committee worked on this for several months. So they are well informed. They looked at survey. Maybe we can ask those former members of the committee, hey, you were involved in this process.
Sure.
Could you take a look, and we'd like to hear what your thoughts are? Because I think those
That's a
people
good
are going to be
idea.
the most informed on what They came up with that
They
latest plan.
represent
Yeah.
a good.
And they
broad
represent their
spectrum.
people as well. I would certainly think that they have some,
And that could give us
value
some
there, too.
quicker turnaround too on,
That
Yep.
actually makes more sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
It's a great idea.
I just think that, I just don't
I
wanna
think
get
that's a good
lost in the weeds,
compromise.
because that's what
Yeah.
we're gonna hear, and it's not gonna
Yeah.
be what we're
That's a
what
good
we're trying to
idea.
focus on
Yeah.
and keep people in line, because we had a heck of a time at just the open house trying to educate what a village green was.
Mhm.
They thought it was a golf
Yeah,
course.
Crystal's right. You're gonna get everything from, we want an aquatic center to a
Mhm.
megapolis of some kind,
Mhm.
you know, and well, the amphitheater is not completely off the table, but the aquatic center is. You know, there are just some things we're just not gonna do there because A, we can't afford it, and B, it's not what a village green does.
No,
I
no,
totally
that's a,
agree.
that's a really good idea to go ahead out to the rest of the.
I think the
that
opportunity
committee.
for the citizens will come, and it's gonna be one where, you know, I think when we make some decisions, similarly to what was presented by the Parks Action Plan updated. That was at the middle school, I believe, right?
We had two locations.
At LaSalle, yes, and that was great, because they had the boards set up, and,
And
you
that's
know,
what
we
we
had
need.
very enthusiastic members who really talked through, you know, several of
That's
the
what we ended up
ideas.
doing for
And
the
I-
community
well,
park too.
Mhm.
We,
It needs to be visually
Yeah, they'd have to have
understood
some
of what your
visual-
concept is, or like a 3D model or something that you can present of, these are the options, and this is what a village green looks like.
Mhm.
Sort of like Abe says was Mr. Kennedy's presentation, it just showed examples of what he saw throughout. But taking that concept and trying to put it in a 3D model, they have that, you know, let's put this here, this tree here, and let's look to see what features can go in that space and what can't from a satellite.
And I think that's a great idea. In fact, I would encourage you, somewhat related, Baldwin is going through a development of their comprehensive plan. And they have a really good website. It's called baldwinsblueprint.com. And you could see all the different sessions that they're having, and I could see us taking some of that. And the website is just designed specifically for that effort there, so great opportunity.
So let's regroup here a minute so that we can give the department clear direction. So what is it that the committee is wanting the department to do in the next one?
Reach out to the Park Action Committee first and present the videos, or where we're at right now, and ask them for their input.
Well, first of all, you have a motion on the floor to
Oh.
postpone this to the next meeting
My
to
apologies.
give the committee a chance to update. I think probably what you ought to do.
We haven't done it.
Yeah, but I think that what you ought to do is vote on that motion. and
Sure.
then
Yes.
Come back to the second part, make another motion as to what other direction we want to give for the department to bring in other input. Otherwise, you're going to get a big confused motion that nobody understands.
Right. So will you state the motion for us, Gary?
First one, motion postpone further discussion and the selection process until the next planning and parks meeting.
Yes.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Now, if somebody wants to make a second motion reference to input from other sources, that would be fine.
Let's kind of put it together before we make it.
Well, that would be good.
I would like to make a motion that we provide the most recent Parks Update Committee with the proposals provided to us, with the interview videos, and have them go through it and provide their first and second choices back to this committee within 2 weeks.
Can I further state, I think with that, just a restatement of what the master plan definition of what the Village Greenwood
Yes.
plan was is included in that
We'll send that
preamble.
along.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and also I would just say that you guys should be updated on what the park action highlight was, because that packet's pretty thick on what we did.
Can
discuss.
can I
Yes, I
make
was
one?
going to send the links to the video, the live streams from the interviews. I was also going to send you the park action plan component that addresses this property. So you have all the background.
Since
Can
we
it all
have,
be put on a flash drive? Those are pretty slick when you do that for us.
Mhm.
Certainly.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Instead of going out looking for it, you know where it's at. Yeah, thank you.
Kim?
Is there anything though stopping us from just also putting it on the city website for people to view
I think
it?
that's,
It's okay, I mean, there's nothing
no,
wrong
it's
with
not
that.
wrong
I
with that.
think you're gonna get when you come out to really define what it is and you've opened it up as this big idea and then you're gonna try to funnel that after they've already thought through this, I think you're gonna have trouble funneling people.
But also though, there are citizens, I have some faith that they're able to look at some things that are going on in their city. I'm not saying that we have to make a call in the newsletter like I started with to do that, but we can certainly post the links so people that want to take a look could do that.
But what's the purpose? So you want to define why we're presenting this, what the master plan is education, and what the purpose of what we're trying to do is define what is a village green. I'm just saying that I just don't
Maybe a
think that you just throw these
suggestion,
out. It's not
and
going
that
to
might
be
cover
perceived.
what Councilmember Remy is. This is going to be a big project here,
Yes, it is.
and it's certainly the center of our city. Perhaps we create a page on the city website, you know, the Village Green
There you go.
Project.
Mhm.
And maybe this is just one set of documents, that will be others as we go on. And so it's just a repository at this point.
Perfect.
But it might be a place too, where we can add a comment box that says, we'd like to hear your questions or comments regarding this project. And we can update people along the way as we're doing
We
that.
have FAQs, what is a village green?
Mm-hmm.
What is not a village green?
Yeah. So we could develop that over time, but I think for a start, we can put these in files.
And so the residents can kind of follow
Yeah.
the process and what
We're supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get the process, I just think that the education piece has to come before anything to understand what is our purpose, what is the end goal here, and what does that look like?
I think absolutely you're right. I mean, if you want to implement
Yeah,
change,
cool, great.
the first step is awareness, and you have to, include that education. But at least I think that addresses both.
I'm confident that whichever firm we select will make us work through that clear definition of what a
Oh.
village green is.
I have no problem with that, I'm just saying public input.
Yeah, I know. And
Well, this way we'll get public input
Mhm.
sooner and along the way, and they'll be participating in the process with us. Sorry, Katie,
no, that's okay.
you want to complete your comment?
So just
You're
one
fine.
quick thing. I know, Katie, you said 2 weeks, but is there any reason why we can just say, leading up to that next meeting, just in case someone can't get to it in 2 weeks and they decide, well, I guess I can't review it, it doesn't make sense, the
It can-
time's up.
It's a short period of time for people that are not on a committee anymore, right?
Right, they're not on the committee. So if we have no reason, let's
Okay.
give them until the day before the next meeting, and then we can get that
Okay.
feedback.
I
Or whatever Joe
I just like to
says.
have shorter timelines because I think everybody just waits until the last
Sure.
minute
We'll
anyway. so.
procrastinate till that last.
I wanted some time to review their comments
Or-
and their thoughts. so
Or a week
that's-
before, or a week before that. I think we
Could I ask for 3 weeks? I'd like to have time to at least consolidate the information.
Yeah,
And get it to you in a workable format.
thank you,
And
Joe.
If we waited till the day of the meeting,
Yeah.
it'd just be,
He'd like to go home.
So there we go,
night.
right in the middle there, just perfect.
So Joe, will you include BD and then that we're also liaisons on that?
yeah,
on 22?
all the members will receive the
Okay.
email.
Because he had some good input too. That was-
Okay, so let's refine your motion.
Who's the second?
Nobody seconded it yet.
I'll second that.
Okay, Joe's second. That, I'm trying to remember what it was even. Why don't you read the motion that I made?
This is what I got. So
Okay, then we'll read.
Motion to
fine.
provide the most recent members of the Park Action Plan Update Committee members with the link to the live stream interviews of design firms for the Village Green project, and ask for recommendations, suggestions in the next 3 weeks.
Recommended suggestions for who should be selected,
Firm.
for the firm that should be selected, back to this committee.
Ken suggested something.
And we can just,
Do we have a second before you do that?
we could put a form on there and they could just
Yeah.
say, this is who I pick, this is 1, this is 2.
I'll have Ms. Arnett try to figure all that out.
Yeah, whatever's easy.
Forms are easy.
Do we have a second?
I did second that, right?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. And we are at the 8:30 ending of this committee. Therefore, I need a motion to be able to continue discussion.
I'll make a motion.
Second, John seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes.
It's what, 3?
It's Ward 3. That's
It
right.
is.
That's right. Where's Frisbee Dog here now?
4 to 3 girls?
Took a float to get you on the agenda.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, the Department of Planning has provided to you a memorandum regarding a problem area located along the portion of the Garden Valley Trail that terminates in Garden Valley Farm subdivision, which is located in Ward 3. This is a difficult area in that there is a detention basin on the east side of the trail, and then this drainage area on the west side. It was always identified as problematic, but when the trail was designed, we couldn't put it or place it in the detention basin. That's not authorized. And we couldn't go further west because of the creek and its characteristics. And so we were in a particular problem, but we believe that we have designed it appropriately to accommodate the major storms that typically occur. Well, we've had atypical storms, and as you can see, it's changed dramatically, and now it's become a public safety concern. To that end, in these situations, we've had this happen in the Rock Hollow corridor. We've gone back to the contractor that we believe is best suited, and that's Kelp Contracting. They have the large equipment, they have the expertise, and they are on our list of approved contractors that is acted upon at the start of each new fiscal year. Kelp provided a bid of approximately $14,400 to make repairs that Tom Kelp believes will stand the test of time. And as mentioned in the memorandum, we did do a short-term repair that we would hope would have been long-term, but wasn't. So tonight, we're presenting that proposal from Kelp Contracting with a recommendation that it be authorized so that it could proceed to City Council for consideration.
Joe, is that the same firm that did the shoring of the community park pavilion?
No, that was Gershenson. Kelp had done, we had a big storm, I don't know if you all remember, it was several years ago. It blew out an area along the creek, and the size of boulders were such and the weight limit on the bridges was such that Kelp came up with the idea, instead of bringing one big piece of equipment, we did 2 smaller ones, and they basically worked in tandem to get the big boulders where we needed them. It's a pretty imaginative solution, and it's stabilized it, and we've not had a problem. So I think they're a good firm for this nature of the project.
John?
Yeah, I have a question about this. Is there any possibility that this could be, I mean, we could have to budget it, but this could be designed to put a bridge over this area that would allow the water to pass underneath this trail?
What I would suggest is if this doesn't work, the bridge probably is going to be the next option.
The next step?
We haven't done what Tom Kelp has proposed, and that's the larger boulders set in deeper into the creek bed itself, and then transitioning from the large to the small. It's a process we used at the Stricker Road Bridge by Point Clayton and has worked. We're hoping it'll work here.
Obviously, the bridge is a more expensive item, but that may be a more permanent solution. Although with the way it's raining lately, I don't know that anything's permanent.
Yeah, it certainly has challenged all of us here that's affiliated with the city. This is the least cost solution with the highest, in my mind, chance of success.
You have the budgetary money set aside to be able to do this at this time?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I'll move that we spend the money to repair this.
Do I hear a second? Katie, second.
I have discussion.
Crystal?
I'm not in favor of kelp. And the reason that I say that now is they did a recent project in Lake Chesterfield, Mr. Kelp did, and it's not up to what he stated for the drainage area from the wetlands into the bigger lake. He used the wrong size pipe. We've tried to communicate with him. He's not communicative. I've talked to Mr. Brown about it. He delayed billing for over a year and wants payment now. I just think his business practices have been falling, and I'm not a big fan. And we're still struggling with him currently for a project that was done for us. So if he's looking at the bigger projects and not taking care of what he's already done, I can't support him until he resolves a past project that he worked with the city with us that we did a cost sharing. So HOA put in half and the city put in half. So there's a joint interest there, but I don't think that it's been handled properly.
I would suggest that Mr. Kelp built what was proposed to him by the city. He had to have a plan, and that plan had to be reviewed by the city.
Mhm.
So if the pipe's wrong, or if the size of the rock is incorrect, that doesn't necessarily come from the contractor.
It's just the response and trying to get him to come out to look, and the billing. I mean, he waited, golly, 9 months to bill, and I was told that that's Kelp for you. That's not a good thing from what the HOA standpoint, and from the complaints that I heard from the residents, that they still have an issue with it.
He's letting you collect interest on it.
I don't know. But I just think his business practices are just kind of, and from where I've heard the complaints, I just can't support him as a contractor. I think that maybe he'll do a great job here, but just because his name's on it, I can't.
Well, it hasn't been the department's experience, so I can only tell you what I know.
Sure.
Yeah, it is surprising to hear that. I mean, I'm not doubting that. I just have heard that he has, well, he's a fixture here in Wildwood, and you know, his reputation has always been good, so I'm very surprised that that's the case there. But I think the city's experience has been positive.
Sure, I'm just saying, I just want to say it from the Ward
Yeah.
7 residents that
Mhm.
has been affected, that I'm here to represent what they want and their voice, and we have a problem. So I can't support something that hasn't been handled properly.
As the maker of the motion, I'm not unaware of any controversies other than what you
I'm
just
fine.
brought up.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Any other
If you'd like-
discussion?
If you like, I'll offer, we could postpone this. We've been lucky so far, it's been dry. And I can certainly talk to Mr. Kelp and see if the situation in Lake Chesterfield can be resolved so that everyone feels comfortable with proceeding forward with it.
So I think it's, I think
There's a
everybody's
motion on the
comfortable.
floor, so we need to call a vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can I speak on the motion or no?
Yeah. Yes, you
Can I
can.
ask Mr. Boonish questions or no?
Yes.
So 3 questions. How quickly did they say they can fix this once the?
They were ready to go about a month and a half ago, first when the problem arose.
Number 2 is, after we vote on this motion, I think we could also, I'd love to see if we can push this also to the Thursday committee to evaluate this in context of the erosion problem too. I think that this is a great example. And the third question is, if we didn't go with them, is this an opportunity to use people like Intuition and people that have erosion experience? Because this recommendation seemingly is not going to be a permanent fix, obviously. This is going to be a temporary fix, probably.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend spending $14,412 without knowing it'd be more of a permanent fix than what we did last time.
Yeah.
The last time, the magnitude,
Yeah.
the extent of the problem was nowhere near this.
Yeah.
This is not a project that Glenn Daly can do necessarily. He just doesn't have the equipment, the
Understood.
size of equipment.
Okay.
This is a Gershenson project. This is a Kelp project.
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
a firm that has expertise on a larger
What did I say?
scale.
What did I say?
You can't
Intuition?
just go and dump a bunch of rocks in there.
I know
so,
that.
you
That's
know.
not what I meant to say. I meant Tim. What's Tim's company that helped us with the erosion task force?
Intuition and logic.
Okay.
Well, that's an engineering firm.
Yeah,
They'll give
they-
us the
yeah.
design.
They won't, right.
do the construction.
Okay. Well, this is clearly a public safety problem right now, so.
Well, we can do better in terms of getting some protective fencing in place. We thought we would move on it quicker, but when we got the proposal, it was more than what the city administrator could sign.
Sure.
And certainly at this scale, it needs to be to the committee and city council. I'm more than willing to postpone it so you can, if you want to have the watershed erosion task force look at the
No.
matter,
No.
No.
or address
address the concerns with the Keller contractor. I'd be glad to take that postponement and try to resolve these two issues.
If we vote tonight, this will go to council on Monday, right?
Yes,
I
sir.
was just going to ask that.
Well, we currently have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you.
That's roll call.
Let's just get it on Monday, so we,
I'll see what I can do by Monday.
I want to get it voted on Monday and then get it
Of
fixed.
the remaining items, I'm being respectful of your time. Madam Chair, the only other one that I would like to try to resolve tonight relates to the naming of the dog park.
Okay.
And those others can wait till our next meeting.
Even the closed session? So we'll go ahead and discuss the proposal for, do you want to do the naming of dog park as waste? Okay. So the discussion regarding the naming of the city's dog park in honor of Metro Westfalen Canine Ward 1.
As the title of the agenda item reflects, Metro West Fire Protection District had a dog that provided search and rescue capabilities. The pet, the canine, passed, and the Metro West Fire Protection District approached the city and was wondering if it would consider naming the city's dog park, Community Park, after Buddy. And Gary talked with Representative Mike Feeman about it, and so we thought it appropriate to bring it to the committee. We think naming the dog park after Buddy would be a nice gesture and certainly solidify a good relationship with the fire district we already have. So we thought it was naming at Buddy's place.
Well, how about just Buddy Memorial Dog Park?
Anything you like.
John's buddy.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we, being the previous mom of 6 Labradors and still having 2 in my ownership, Labradors have a special place anyway in the world. They just do, guys. But I would recommend that we move forward with naming it Buddy's Place and keep the name the same as what the Metro West Fire Protection District,
Did
who
they
is helping.
suggest Buddy's Place?
No, that Buddy's was what they wanted and we just added the
Oh.
phones.
Okay, no, I think it's perfect.
And I, is
So I
there,
have
you need a
second.
second? I'll be happy. Oh,
Who said?
I was gonna say, brilliant idea. I love the idea of the park, and I hope that maybe we can get a plaque that maybe has a little image of the dog or something. And when that is there, maybe we can have a little something at the park with the folks from Metro West to recognize the naming of the park.
The memorandum addresses the signage, and we thought it appropriate to ask Metro West to fund that.
Yes.
Oh, so they'll take care of that then, okay.
We'll have, the city will have review authority, so it would come first to this committee, then city council before any signage would be added in the vicinity of the dog.
Okay.
So the motion on the floor is to name the area Buddy's Place, correct?
That's,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I apologize for the delay in starting the meeting, but we made it in 2 hours and we tackled the ones that were most pressing, so thank you.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Do you need these back, Joe?
Yes.
Okay,
I have a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.